My first agenda item is an update from the last Power Hour, which is where we talked about South Australia's world's largest battery built by Tesla. And you asked how many of the news articles at the time actually mentioned the capacity, which turned out to be insufficient to help South Australia last January during the heat wave. And so I made a cursory Google search, not comprehensive data here, but some of the big ones like the New York Times, Financial Post, CNN, Financial Times, CNN, and CNBC failed to mention the actual capacity. So they said something like, from a Tesla advertisement, enough to power 30,000 homes. Some added that 30,000 homes for 1 hour at
Well,
maximum
that's a
capacity.
big. Wait a second. That
That's a big difference.
so
Yeah.
because I see this in your notes, I see New York Times Australia says powering 30,000 homes. Did they say for 1 hour?
I think they did not. No.
Okay, I'd be interested in just checking on that one because that's a huge that's a huge difference to say I can power it indefinitely versus I can power it for an hour.
Yeah. So the way Tesla put it actually, and that's I think where the 30,000 number comes from, is Tesla said, okay, during an emergency, this can power 30,000 homes for about an hour or more. And so it turned out that even that wasn't true. They had like the discharging capacity was like a third at the time in January when it was needed, and it ran for about 3 hours. But nevertheless, so that's just unchecked journalism. It's just taking what Tesla says and claims and putting that in their own words when they haven't even understood the problem or the context of things. And I just want to give some more quotes here. So, for example, Jay Weatherhill, the South Australian premier at the time, said, so the world's largest lithium ion battery will be an important part of our energy mix. And that, of course, is not true because it was clear from the outset that this relatively small battery was initially just like on the technical level, it was only meant to support the local wind farm, which had about 300, 400 megawatts, I think, of capacity. And then the news articles over and over reformulated this and said, okay, so this will enable the wind farm to provide 24/7 energy. And that's not true, of course, because this entirely depends on the weather pattern. If there's enough, uh, high production from the wind farm before the energy is needed to charge the battery to full capacity, yeah, then you might get that out of the battery. But if there's very little wind before the doldrums hit, the battery cannot even charge to full capacity, and then there's no energy from the wind farm plus a battery at any given time. So this depends totally on the weather. Nothing of that in the news articles, of course. And so this was turned then into South Australia is now leading the world in dispatchable renewable energy. Yeah, that's a big accomplishment if nobody else even tries that. You can have this little car battery and claim that you're the world's leader in that. But so I think there are two culprits in this. One is the politicians who found this very useful to claim, oh, we are now the world leader and this will solve the actual crisis. And the other is Tesla advertising this as a real viable solution, as if Tesla could come in and, provide any area of the world with grid scale storage, which was never true. And they kind of acknowledged it even when saying, okay, during an emergency power, we can provide a small fraction of the South Australian grid, like 30,000 homes is not even that large part of South Australia, with emergency power if needed. But mostly we are just smoothing out this one wind farm. That's the truth behind it. And of course, the articles then totally butchered it.
I saw in the news that there's some Texas project to build the world's biggest battery. So this seems like this contest now that people are having to build these big batteries, and as much as possible, they're trying not to put in context how how trivial they actually are and how they're not at all replacing fossil fuels or nuclear in terms of providing abundant, reliable energy.